So guys, pre-season is already upon us. The Championship clubs have been back in training this week, and it feels like, it's all been a bit of a whirlwind, hasn't it? With last season just finished and we're already looking forward to next year. So what I thought we'd do for today's video is look into, currently with the bookmakers, who are the favourites for promotion and relegation, and using those odds, I've formulated the league table for who the bookmakers are fancying at each end of the table. Obviously, a lot can change between now and then, but I want to know from you guys, what are your initial predictions? Who do you think will be strong next season, and who do you think is going to struggle? Before we do hop into anything though, a big shout out to our sponsor over at OneFootball. You can check out their link in the top line of the description down below. Over the summer, they have gone ahead and redesigned the app. It's looking really fresh. Now, in today's video, we're going to be looking into a few players' individual stats, and if I think they can play a big role next season over on the OneFootball app. It's really handy to have for looking into those stats. Also, for getting transfer news, the latest updates, and live updates to your phone when any goal does go in for the new season, OneFootball is the place to be, so I'll leave a link in the top line of the description down below. So perhaps unsurprisingly, the favourite to be relegated is Wycombe at the moment. I'm sure we all saw their stats from last season in League One. They actually only scored 21 goals from open play last season. The vast majority of their goals coming from things like set pieces and penalties, 19 from set pieces and 10 goals from the penalty spot. They came up playing effective football. The question is if that can be translated into the Championship where there is such an increase in quality. Their top scorer last season, their left back Joe Jacobson, who got 11 goals. After that we had Akinfenwa bagging 10 and Fred Onyedinma, who didn't quite cut it in the Championship last season with Millwall but has developed as a player since. Will Wycombe surprise a few people next season, or will that jump up in quality catch up with them? What do you guys think? 23rd sees Rotherham there, understandably so. I mean, the promoted clubs are always going to be the favourites for relegation coming into this one before we've had much of the transfer window as well. I'm interested to see how Rotherham go about their business, but actually the only side from League One last season who scored from more set pieces than Wycombe did. 25 of their goals came from set piece situations, so obviously a real danger for them. Paul Warne as well, I think, is a very good manager. Their last stint in the Championship, he came in and steadied the ship towards the end of the season in many ways. They're looking to get rid of that monkey off their back, saying that they are a yo-yo side between League One and the Championship. They want to establish themselves now. And then that last club in there is Sheffield Wednesday. Now, they are starting this season out on minus 12 points. Had they had that point deduction from last season, they would have been relegated. Now, Wednesday this season is going to be a very interesting one for me because it's already been a bit of a busy summer for them. You know, they've had a fair few players leaving. Their top scorer from last season, Stephen Fletcher, has left. Gary Monk's got a bit of a rebuilding job on his hands there. I'm still not completely sold on Gary Monk as well. At Sheffield Wednesday, I think he's got quite a few doubters to turn around next season. No side scored fewer home goals than Sheffield Wednesday did. It was a real problem for them. The question of if Wednesday can overturn this 12-point deficit or not, it's really a question of how strong is the bottom of the Championship going to be. Above Wednesday, the bookmakers have Luton in there at the moment. Now, Luton ended last season fantastically well. They only lost one game after lockdown. Nathan Jones seems to have the formula with this Luton squad, and going forward, if they buy sensibly, there's no question why they can't build on their finish from last season and look to go forward. They did spend their fair majority of the season in the bottom three, but taking their momentum from last season into this time, they were not an easy side to go up against. Reading in 20th is an interesting one. This was their first season gone by since their playoff campaign, really, where they've been sort of comfortable mid-table and not really struck with fear around relegation. But I feel like Reading's a club with so much potential with this current crop of players, but they're always one day away from disaster with the way the club's been run over the last seasons as well. It's a funny old club. They're another club who I'm reserving my judgment on until the end of the transfer window, really, because honestly, I could predict Reading to finish pretty much anywhere next season. But given all the external factors, I really don't know what to think of them going into next year. QPR in 19th, another one which I'm not all too surprised at this point of the season. You know, a lot of people see the speculation linking Eze and Braxai Samuel away. You know, they don't have Jordan Hugill there anymore. There's going to be another bit of a rebuild for Mark Warburton to do. He proved from last season, though, that he's more than capable of doing that on a shoestring budget. So it's going to be more of the same going into this season for QPR. The question is that sustainable? Birmingham in 18th. I think the Karanka factor for me puts Birmingham a little bit ahead of that at this point in time, I'd say. Last season, by all accounts, was a disappointing season with a fairly inexperienced coach, Pep Clotter, in charge. But I think that with the experience of Karanka, if they do angle their signings in the right way, Birmingham's got a little bit more scope and hope to that next season, for my view. But the one that really surprised me with the bookmakers at the moment was having Millwall in 17th. Now, I know that they're not normally too kind for Millwall. I mean, I wasn't at the start of last season. I had them in my bottom three, didn't I? But the way that they played post Gary Rowett coming in, I can't see Millwall having that much of a fall off next season. I actually think they'll be stronger. I think that in the chasing pack for the top six, there's a few clubs who are going to be in transition. I'm not actually sure how strong the league's going to be next season. I think it's going to be very open. They've already added to their squad. Ryan Woods is there now for another season. Troy Parrott's come in. There's already been more links to players they're looking to bring in as well. That's a vast undervaluation of Millwall there. The next one is also a very interesting interesting one. Bristol City, quite similar to Reading in my view, a club which is very unpredictable to predict at the moment. Now, with them appointing Dean Holden yesterday, you feel like had they gone for a tried and tested manager, someone like Chris Hughton, then Bristol City would have probably been bumped up massively in the odds for promotion, because it's a club who does show ambition in the transfer window. You know, they're very much, the model of the club is to sell a player on for a big fee, recuperate a lot of that and invest it back into the squad. But I think they've done it fairly well over the last few years. I think a lot of Bristol City fans, there is quite a bit of negativity around there at the moment, but there's a sense of unpredictability for what Bristol City could be next season. Perhaps one of the most surprising things so far, Barnsley predicted all the way up in 15th. Obviously, they survived on the last day of the season thanks to Wigan's points deduction, but it was a terrific run they went on towards the end of the season. Now, one of the factors why they've been predicted so high, I'd imagine, is their form under Gerhard Struber was mid-table form. You can't take that away from them. You know, they started the season awfully, didn't they? But it was a bit of a naive squad that came up from League One, but they managed to get their act together eventually. And I mean, this prediction has them above the likes of Bristol City and Millwall. That's bold from the bookmakers there. Huddersfield are as high as 14th in this one. Once again, another unknown. There's so many Championship clubs who are going to be in transition coming into this season, either with a new manager or with a big high turnover of players. It's going to be such an unpredictable season. Carlos Corberán is a manager who does excite me, obviously coming in from Leeds backroom staff. It's going to be a completely new brand of football, considering what they were playing last season under the Caldis, which was effective, not always the easiest on the eye. But once again, bringing in a manager like Corberán, there's no guarantee that that's going to click either. Then we have Coventry all the way up in 13th place. I mean, there's always one side that tends to come up from League One and absolutely smashes it in the Championship. The bookmakers at the moment, they're backing that side to be Coventry. Now, Mott Robbins has done a terrific job. They used that 3 at the back system really efficiently towards the end of the season, being unbeaten in their last 14 matches in League One. The 2 wing backs, very impressed by them. Sam McCallum, who previously we've spoken about on the channel, he was linked to a few Championship clubs for a while. I think that Leeds in January were linked with Sam McCallum. Dabo as well. It seems to be an efficient system. And then Matty Gordon, who was their top scorer from last season, bagged 15 goals in all competitions. Out of the 3 promoted sides, I want to know from you guys, who do you think is going to be strongest and weakest? Then slap bang in the middle, we have Blackburn Rovers. In my video where we spoke about a player from each club who's got a point to prove next season, a lot of Blackburn fans being vocal that it seems like now or never for someone like Sam Gallagher and Brent Brereton. Adam Armstrong was their talisman from last season, but he needs more help with players chipping in for goals. If it does happen for one of those strikers, Blackburn have a case that they could be in and around the top 6 next season. I think that Mowbray's got a solid foundation of players there. And then we got Preston North End. Of course, we're in 11th in the bookmakers odds at the moment. We just can't get away from this position, can we? But with Preston, I'm not really too sure what I'm thinking about next season. There's so many unknowns with us at the moment when it comes to contract situations, whether, you know, the majority of our squad's going to be staying on with us for this season or not. We've not made any signings yet. We've not really been linked to that many people either. It's just all been very quiet around Preston over these last few weeks since the season finished. Like I was mentioning with Blackburn before, I don't think it's going to take much more for us to seriously have a push this season as well. If we do keep this current group of players together, 1 or 2 more quality additions, I don't think we need wholesome changes over the summer. It's just a question of, can we keep hold of the likes of Ben Davis, Ben Pearson, Daniel Johnson? We'll wait and see. 10th place and jumping up quite a bit in this table, we do have Middlesbrough. Now this has got to be the Neil Warnock effect. I mean, he came in, saved them from relegation. I don't think this Borough squad should have been anywhere near the bottom 3 last season. They tried the Woodgate experiment, it ultimately didn't work, but with some of the players that Middlesbrough have been linked to recently, if they do really pull their finger out in this transfer market, Borough, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see as being a bit of a dark horse next season. There are obvious areas where they need to improve the squad. You know, there's gaps in quality when you compare their team lined up to somebody else that are going to be going for the top 6 next season, but Borough definitely one to watch out for if they get their recruitment right. In 9th place we have Derby County, maybe a little bit low for me. I'd be bumping Derby up in my prediction right now if I had to make it. I think that they got a very good crop of youngsters. Koku has got his tactics and system implemented into this team. It took a bit of time for him to settle in initially. I think that players returning into this squad could also play a large part. You know, Christian Bielik, Jack Marriott, who we didn't see a lot of last season as well, if he can get back to his best and stay fit. There's a lot to like about this Derby squad at the moment. There are areas where they need to improve. You know, a goalkeeper's obvious. You know, they were never going to make the top 6 with a goalkeeper like Ben Hamer from last season, or I'd even say Roos as well. If they nail that position, Derby definitely capable. 8th place we have Stoke City. Now, Stoke fans, we need to have a bit of a word here, because in my last 2 seasons of making prediction videos at the start of the season. I've had Stoke in my top 6 in both of them, and you've let me down both times. It's been a flop of a season. This time round, and I know I've said this in previous seasons, but there does seem to be something happening at Stoke eventually. There's a bit of a different feeling with O'Neill. Their form since he's came in has been very good. Their home form especially has been exquisite. Could definitely be one to watch out for, but I'm just reserving my judgment on them for the time being because I've backed them for the previous 2 seasons and they've not delivered. In 7th place, it seems to be a bit of a cursed spot for Forest at the moment, but Nottingham Forest are there with the bookmakers at the moment. Now, Lamucci has the point to prove, as well as this Forest squad next season. They were in there for the vast majority of their season. Their squad was more than good enough to make it. Ultimately, they fell short for a variety of reasons, whether that be individual mistakes, conceding late goals, tactically sitting back when they should try and kill off a game and things like that, slipping up in home games where they shouldn't have. There was a few things that towards the end of the season, just some of their weaknesses were exposed a little bit. Keep that squad and manager together. They should learn from their mistakes. I think they will challenge next season. In 6th place, we got Cardiff. No surprises here. I think that the job that Neil Harris has done there, he's proved himself. Very effective football they play. They've already been linked to a few sort of ambitious targets in the transfer market. You know, if they did bring in someone like Keith Moore, I think they are in need of another striker. That will really help the cause of them next season. Defensively, very solid side. With the 3 clubs that are being relegated from the Premier League as well, there's a few unknowns about them at the moment. A side like Cardiff could easily challenge with the effective football they play. I think that they'll have learned quite a bit from their playoff experience this time round. 5th place, we have Swansea. The bookmakers backing them to make the playoffs again. Maybe a little bit high for me at the moment because we're still waiting on, I think recruitment's going to be a big thing for them, obviously. Brewster, Gallagher and Woodman all last season played a massive part in their playoff push. What you would say about them though, Steve Cooper seems to have a system and a philosophy that all the players are bought into. They're a good up and coming coach, I'd say as well. There's very fine margins in this region of the table. I don't think, let's say for argument's sake, there's much between a Swansea, a Cardiff, a Forest, a Preston, a Derby, a Millwall, a Blackburn. 1 or 2 players make such a difference at this level. In 4th place, we then have Bournemouth, so the first of the relegated clubs from the Premier League. Now, over the past, we've always seen 1, maybe 2 clubs that have come down that have instantly struggled. You know, Sunderland, back-to-back relegations. Wolves a few years ago did that as well, but in recent memory, Sunderland, Huddersfield struggled, Stoke struggled. Looking at each of the relegated squads right now, and I know that we're going to see players leaving over the next few weeks, I think that all 3 of them should be competing. This is going to be Jason Tindall's first stint as a manager himself in the EFL after being assistant for so long to Eddie Howe. From the players that I expect to stay at this Bournemouth side, you can still form a really solid championship squad. You know, the likes of Lewis Cook, David Brooks, Ramsdale, who there have been offers in for, but I think they'll do everything to keep hold of. You expect the likes of Callum Wilson and Josh King to leave, Nathan Ake, who's already gone, but they've got several upcoming players in that squad who I think could really do some damage in the championship. Sam Surridge, another one who I hope gets game time for them next season. They've got options. And in 3rd place, we've got Watford, probably the side with the most unknowns about them at the moment, still yet to announce their new manager. Vladimir Ivic remains to be the favourite, but we've had no confirmation as such yet. Now, Watford are an interesting one. I'd probably say have maybe the most quality out of the squads that have been relegated, but I'd also say maybe the most problems with players in the dressing rooms. I think there'll be a few sort of bad eggs that they're looking to ship out there. I think that in the Bournemouth dressing room we saw towards the end of the season, and with Norwich as well, I still think there's harmony within those groups, whereas Watford, I think there's maybe a few cracks looking from the outside looking in. At the start of the season, I don't think that many people had either Bournemouth or Watford to be relegated really. Probably more so than anyone else in need of this rebuild, and we could see a very high turnover of players, with several of them already been linked with moves away. From the 3 relegated clubs at the moment, Watford are the one I'm most unsure about because they could either absolutely smash it or they could fall off a cliff. Then into 2nd place we do have Norwich City. Now interestingly enough, Norwich being obviously the worst in the Prem last season but the favourite by the bookmakers to make that bounce back up. Now one of the reasons is they have that championship know-how about them. They couldn't adapt to the Premier League for whatever reason, but for the championship, and they've already made several signings which I'm fairly looking forward to see how they settle in. I do think Norwich should be up around the top of the championship battling for it. There's no excuse for them not to be. Even if they do lose 1 or 2 of the likes of a Buendia, of Max Aarons, I still think there's more than enough quality in that squad, and the system they played last time in the championship, which can be effective at this level, plays to get them over the line. You know, Timu Pukki I think is one who they have to keep hold of. Adam Ida, a player who could make a step up into that first team and help out with Timu Pukki, with chipping in for the goals. He scored a hat-trick against us in the Cup last season. I'm also interested to see if they try to sort of re-establish some of the players who they cast away last season back into the first first team, the likes of Moritz Leitner, who was brilliant in their promotion campaign, barely got any first team football last season. Mario Varancic, another one, Marcus Stiepermann. I think that Norwich squad should be right up there. And then finishing it off, the favourites with Sky Bet at least for promotion at the moment are Brentford. Now, I've seen a lot of different takes about Brentford on my Twitter timeline recently. Now, it's part of the model that they, build up players and sell them on. That's probably going to happen this summer. I don't think that any Brentford fans are in any delusions about that. The likes of Ollie Watkins and Cy Benrahma are the main two that a lot of people are pointing at the moment. But their recruitment's just so good. Even if they do lose those two players, I still back them to be right up there next season. We saw it last summer when they sold Neil Maupay. The similar questions were being asked to this squad. They were really coming into that last season without a striker. Like Ollie Watkins before had always really played as a wide man, mostly out on that right hand side for them. They always seem to have an answer. That money that they got from Neil Maupay, they invested excellently. They brought the likes of Pontus Jansson and Ethan Pinnock and David Raya, who really sorted out the defensive line, Christian Norgard and Jensen into midfield as well. If there's one club who's capable of actually spending money sensibly in the Championship, it is probably Brentford. They're going to get upwards of 40-45 million if they do sell both Benrahma and Watkins. So I'm not all too surprised to see them being the favourites at the moment, but we'll see. It's still very early days. But as you can see to the side of me, guys, those are the bookmakers' early predictions for who they see as the favourites for promotion and relegation, as we are now at the start of pre-season. It's still going to be a while before I give you guys my predictions for how I see this season going. I want to see how this transfer window shapes up over the next month or so. A lot of factors could change. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Get your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you fancy for being strong next season? Who do you think is going to go down? Who do you think is going to be a dark horse as well? So stay tuned for some regular Championship content. We are continuing with these daily uploads. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.